All right.
I'm Mike Siegel from BBI, and this is Sy'56, a heavy contributor to the site now. And we're here to talk about the last game and the next game.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things I know everyone's concerned about, Sy, is the performance of the offense. And we were both taking a pretty serious look at the offensive line this time. Why don't you explain to everybody some of your observations about Hart, because I know you were pretty down on him in the last game, and what you felt the problems were.
Yeah, I mean, you could still consider him a young player, and he still needs to gain a lot of experience. He actually didn't play that much at Florida State, so you could say he's more raw than your typical young tackle in the league. So you're going to have to take your lumps with a young player like this, and I think what we see with Bobby Hart right now is someone that, 3-4 plays in a row, very solid, and then that one play where, for example, Nassib, the defensive end from the Cleveland Browns, does a quick inside out, and Bobby Hart's left, whiffing and not even touching him and putting pressure on Geno Smith, and Geno Smith ends up running to a sack at the hands of Myles Garrett. That sack on paper is, given up by Eric Flowers, but it was the fault of Bobby Hart. And I think at the end of the day, it's an inconsistent player that just has a hard time getting consistent movement on players, but also just keeping track of his footwork and his balance. I
see. I hadn't really charted that play. The ones I looked at in this game closely were the first team set,
mm-hmm.
And I was pretty impressed with Hart. As the protection was around Eli.
There's a lot to like about him. I mean, at training camp, he's got a very impressive build, very strong legs, but light feet. He has a huge lower body, but he's got those dancing bear type feet, where that's what, as a scout, that's what you're always looking for. Big bodies, but guys that can move their feet quickly. And Bobby Hart can do that, and I think that is what the Giants see in him in terms of upside. And they're just going to have 7th round pick. You're going to have to take your lumps with them.
Can we talk a little bit about the stunt that happened? I mean, it happened twice in the first team sets, where Hart's man disengaged, runs around the man behind Jerry and into the gap.
Yeah, I mean, to be simple about this, it's a way to trick the offensive line. The offensive line, repetition after repetition, they can get into this routine of just the guy in front of them, hold on to him for as long as you can until Eli gets the ball out. If you do that time after time after time, they can fall into this false sense of a rhythm where they assume that they know what's coming. And then what happens on a stunt like this, the guy on the outside, who was originally lined up against Hart, runs at Hart as if he's been doing the entire game. At the last second, he runs to the inside shoulder, where John Jerry, the right guard, same thing, has run into this routine of blocking the same guy in front of him, play after play, and doesn't realize that the man is going to his right. John Jerry follows him. The man that was originally lined up against Bobby Hart comes to John Jerry's inside shoulder, and that play, John Jerry, I don't think he even realized it until the Schobert was already by him.
Right. That's what I saw. That the end had flashed by him as he was turning to get him.
Yeah, I mean, it's a way to confuse the offensive line, and a lot of teams do it now. It used to be like the Rex Ryan staple. Every play on both sides of the ball, there were stunts coming in and out. It creates a lot of confusion. And if you have an offensive line that has enough chemistry, which is what we're talking about, what the Giants are trying to build with these guys right now, and enough experience, they'll understand that, hey, eventually something like that's coming, and they'll always be on their toes. And I think John Jerry just honestly forgot that it was a possibility, and it allowed a sack.
Now, Vereen had come through the hole on one of those plays where the defender was coming through the gap and didn't engage him at all. Is that proper for that particular scheme? 9 times
out of 10, when a running back is going to run through the line and into a pass route, they first have to check if there's help needed to protect the passer. They're usually the last man out into their route. And Vereen, without knowing the play and the responsibility, again, we're on the outside looking in here, but more often than not, that running back's responsibility is to make sure everything's okay at the line before he runs out into that route. So you could put it on his shoulders as well. Now,
we had, before we turned the camera on, been talking about the zone blocking scheme. Can we talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, a lot of teams implement this now. If you remember when Shanahan was coaching the Broncos, they were known for their zone blocking scheme. And basically what it is to make this as simple as possible, is that the offensive lineman is on running plays designated to a certain area to block, all right? If you're going to move, eventually you're going to run into a defender. The defenders are all about gap control. Everyone is assigned to a gap. If that offensive lineman is moving to his right and someone is originally not there, eventually, whether it's the first level or the second level, you're going to have a defender there to put your hat on. And it doesn't necessarily matter who's lined up across from you originally. It's after the snap and you start moving in the direction you're supposed to be moving in, you put your hat on someone that's eventually in your zone and you move them to where he wants to go. Now it's on the running back's shoulders to say, hey, I'm not necessarily running to the third gap from the line. I'm running into that area and then finding the crease that is naturally created by the defenders being taken where they want to be taken. And it's a way that you do need a little bit more athleticism out of your offensive lineman than just straight gap control blocking. But you also need a running back that, we use this word a lot when you're scouting players' instincts. You need to have a running back that just has a natural feel, and it's something you can't really measure objectively. You have to watch these guys play. If you want to watch a great zone runner, Le'Veon Bell, that guy, it seems like he sits back there for, 5 seconds per rush, and eventually it's like, all right, I found the crease, I'm gone. And it's a skill. It's not necessarily a talent that guys can practice. You can get better with experience, but it's almost like a God-given skill that a lot of these guys have. It's just a natural knack for finding the running lanes. And it is a way that can hide deficiencies within lone blockers on an offensive line. Denver, they were known for finding guys in the 6th, 7th round, undrafted free agency period. That's who their entire offensive line was compiled of. And it's because these guys were more, chemistry built, but also very athletic, and they adapted to the scheme that was implemented. And the Giants run a mix of a zone blocking, gap control scheme. I would say they're more zone blocking now. That's what Green Bay runs, and that's where McAdoo's come from. So I think they've kind of steered their offensive line in that direction a bit more so.
Now, in addition to Jerry and Hart and the issues that we discussed about them, it came up in the middle of the week or after the game that Carl Banks and Bob Papa had indicated that they were more concerned about the center of the line than the tackles. Mm-hmm. Can we talk a little bit about Richburg and what's happening over there?
Yeah, Richburg has had a couple of injuries throughout early in his career, and it always seemed like there was a reason why he wasn't performing well. The ankle, the wrist, the hand. And at the end of the day, since day one, Richburg, he was a surprise draft pick for me when they drafted him. I thought he was drafted a little high. He's always had trouble holding the point of attack. And usually the center is not blocking someone by themselves, unless they're at the second level. They usually have help from one side or the other, right? And so usually a deficiency there can be hidden a little bit. But the scouting report on him is he can be pushed back if you put a big boy in front of him. And most 3-4 teams have a very big, physical, stout nose tackle. And that is the guy that is always, Richburg has always struggled to move. And, I think it's really messed with the chemistry of the offensive line because he's consistently getting blown back. And he's consistently needing help from either Justin Pugh or John Jerry, whatever direction the ball is going in. And it takes away from what those guys can do elsewhere. And it seems like every time the Giants are trying to run the ball at the middle, it's just a big clog of mess. And Richburg, I can remember when the Giants were on this documentary on NFL Network, they followed their scouts around. This is the year Weston Richburg got drafted, and they were at the Senior Bowl, and they all loved him. They were saying, oh, that guy could have started for us last year. And here we are a few years into his career, and it looks like he might be either the weakest or second weakest link on this offensive line. And it doesn't bode well for the fact that his free agency period is coming up.
It's, as I'm looking at the 5 linemen, sometimes I see Hart coming and, putting pressure on the pocket, but his man is really engaged. Mm-hmm. And I see the same thing from Flowers as well. But the problem, it seems to me, is that when the front comes in, Eli has nowhere to go. Yeah,
trying to put pressure on a quarterback, like the simplest way to disturb a quarterback is pressure up the middle. We saw that when the Giants played against Tom Brady in the Super Bowl. When you get pressure coming in at his feet, all right, Peyton Manning was the same way. These guys, they do not like that. If you have a pass rusher coming from the backside or either outside, They're able to step up into the pocket, evade pressure a little bit easier. When you have pressure coming right at you, and you also don't have the mental security that your outside is going to be pretty clean, it really makes the quarterback rush into a decision. And Eli Manning at his worst is when he's in that kind of situation where he drops back and there's just no confidence that he can step up in the pocket, and he's just going to be running for his life the entire time. And I think that's what we're seeing with him a little bit with this group of offensive linemen over the past couple of years. The confidence in the pocket just isn't there. And even though he's very experienced, he's very tough, he's had a lot of success, when you take a confidence away from a quarterback in the pocket, bad things happen.
Would you agree, though, that the tackles are improving?
Yeah. In the first 2 preseason games, the tackles played well. Well enough to say, like, hey, these guys might be on the uptick. We saw some ugly play in training camp. But at the Giants, let's not forget, they might have one of the top starting defensive end duos in the league. Vernon and JPP look like they appear to be in midseason form right now. And it's great experience for Flowers and Hart to go against those guys every day. And, like we've said this a million times, the talent is not the issue with Eric Flowers especially. The guy has talent. Like, if he were to go into the NFL draft next year, somebody's taking him in the first round because there's an upside with him. There aren't many guys his size with that kind of foot speed, with that kind of hand strength. It's just mechanical technique, consistency, and, from what I saw at training camp, does he care about the details? And is his body language, does he want to work hard? Does he want to work hard like Landon Collins does, like Odell Beckham does? And I think that's what it's going to take for him to get to that next level. Those are a question, honestly, we can't answer. That's for in-house stuff. So that's just speculation on our part. They are playing better. I thought Flowers played well against, the number 1 pick in the draft last year, who you could say he's a rookie, but Myles Garrett was the top defensive end prospect coming out of college we've seen in a long, long time. He has NFL star written all over him. For the most part, I think Flowers held his own.
So, just one more question on the offensive line, and then we'll move on. But how much of this is attributable to preseason and vanilla, and how much of it is attributable to some things we should be worried about?
I do think defenses have an advantage in preseason. Like you said, it's vanilla game planning, and it's you can even see that in practice. A lot of times the defense knows what's coming, so it's hard to really get a true valuation on these guys. But I do think that this is the one part of the team that could hold everything back. I think otherwise the Giants are Super Bowl contenders, but I don't think they have a Super Bowl caliber offensive line. And that can change in a few weeks because there's a lot of youth there. You have Flowers and Hart are probably 2 of the most, hey, the Giants could be a 11-win team. The Giants are going to be a 7-win team. Like, those 2 guys really carry a lot of the weight, and there's a lot of pressure on them this year. And when you're talking about talent, hopefully evolving into skill, production, consistency, it's anyone's guess. And if these guys, like, if you want to rate them on a 1 out of 10 as a pair last year, if they played at a 4 last year, if they can simply get up to a 6, which I do think is possible, I think that could mean big things for the Giants this year.
The Giants have to get the running game going.
Yeah, and part of it, Monday night, I was really disappointed in Paul Perkins. This is a guy that I've loved out of UCLA, and I'm really happy he's going to get a shot to be the guy. But there were 2 separate plays where, he didn't see a gaping hole that he was supposed to run, and he wasn't following his blockers. It's not like the hole was on the backside where, you're telling him to see a backside right lane when he's supposed to run to the left. The lane that he was supposed to run into, a.k.a. follow his blockers, he didn't do it. I think he's under the assumption now that he has to create on his own. And that gets a lot of running backs in trouble sometimes. Sometimes you have to trust the system, even if you don't trust the players, and make the most out of it. And if the running game isn't there this year, I wouldn't say the Giants' offense is doomed, but it's going to make things a lot tougher.
Well, the first play of the game, it seemed to me he did follow his blockers, and it was a disaster.
Yeah, and that's what happens. At the end of the day, how many? I think I want to say there were 3 or 4 runs that he had to take a loss on, one of which was for 6 yards, I think, and at the hands of Bobby Hart, who just got beat off the ball by Nassib. But it's almost like a quarterback. When you get the ball in your hands and you're assuming there isn't going to be any holes there aren't going to be any lanes that you're going to have to create on your own, you almost think your way into a loss of yardage. Paul Perkins' one run where he followed the lane, ran to the left, and Rhett Ellison made 2 unbelievable blocks on that play. that is what he ran to where he was supposed to do. He ran to where he was supposed to go. And, I think this week is going to be big because the Giants are going to be really challenged with this pretty strong Jets defensive front. And my hope with Perkins is that, hey, I'm going with the system. I'm going to run to where I'm supposed to run. I'm going to, hope for the best and see what happens.
And I thought, someone that we've been talking about all training camp really stepped up again and showed, his value, and that's Ellison. Yeah,
Ellison, I can't speak highly enough about the block he made on Perkins' long run. That was a top tier performance on that play. And, I think fans are so gung-ho about the stats, the catches, the yards per catch, the touchdowns. But those are the plays that win games, and I think I think we're going to see Rhett Ellison. I think he's had 52 career catches up to this point in his first 5 years. I think he's going to be at least that this year.
He made a heck of a catch and a run up the sideline.
Yep.
It was something I loved seeing.
Yeah. He's the old school blue collar tight end that he loves to do the dirty work, but when you give him the opportunity to make a play, he's going to make it. So if you sleep on him, which is possible because there's so much talent running routes when everyone's healthy, Beckham, Marshall, Shepard, Ingram, this guy could sneak out to a flat, overlooked, and I think he can make things happen with the ball in his hands. So I'm really excited to see what he can offer this team.
Are we overrating Shepard?
I don't think so. I think he's going to struggle to see snaps in this offense because, he's not taking any snaps away from Marshall and Beckham. That's not happening. And I think that Ingram, you're going to see a lot of him in the slot. I think you're going to see Ellison on the field a lot. So I think it's going to be a numbers game with him a little bit. I think his ceiling is limited. He's never going to be the type of receiver that turns into a star, an Odell Beckham type. But I like to compare him to, Willie Snead from the New Orleans Saints. A name that you don't hear a lot, but he's consistently 70, 80 catches a year. Maybe not big plays, but, this offense is going to heavily rely on the short passing game, and that's where he excels. So I think we're going to just see more of the same. I think last year I was surprised by how well he produced, but I think that's what we're going to see year after year. I don't really ever see him reaching the non-giant Steve Smith style. I don't think he's ever going to be that 5'10" number one receiver. He doesn't need to be, not here.
But they do, and including Shepard, have to hold on to the ball.
Yeah, that's the number one way to kill an offense. And I think no matter what, it's going to be difficult for the Giants to score a lot of points this year. It just is. With the offensive line and the running game not being in sync. Eli Manning is a quality starting quarterback, but you could see obvious signs of slowing down last year. Is his arm strength starting to decrease a little bit? They're not going to be among the league leaders in points scored. And you can... If you're in addition to that, if you're not going to hold on to the ball, it's going to kill them.
So, what should we be looking for at the Jets game?
I want to see the Giants. I don't care necessarily how many points to score. I would love to see them cross the goal line. It's been 2 games now; they haven't scored a touchdown, and the Jets defense can defend their way into a few Jets wins this year. They are almost one of the jokes of the league. I think they're the only team in the league right now that. Other than the allotted Thursday night game that every team gets, every single one of their games this year is at 1 p.m. That is pretty much the biggest slap in the face the league can give a team, saying nobody cares about you guys. And so they are considered one of the jokes of the league right now, but they have a pretty good defense. And if the Giants can go out there and move the ball against a squad like this, I think it can really elevate their confidence heading into the regular season, because this is basically the last full dress rehearsal for the offense before week 1 at Dallas. So I would just like them to see them consistently move the ball through the air and the ground. They don't need to put up 30 points in the first half. They don't need long touchdowns to Marshall and Beckham. Not that they're going to play, but just consistent movement. I don't want to see 3 and outs for the first 2-3 drives like we've been seeing.
Yeah, that seems to be a constant that we got all season last year.
Yep.
And we're starting to get it in preseason.
Yep.
One thing I do like is to see the variety of the formations the Giants have been working on in preseason.
Yeah, that's a good observation. There's been, we saw the first play of the game against Cleveland, we saw Rhett Ellison and Evan Ingram on the field, both in the backfield. So, there's still this little debate right now. They're going to keep a fullback. And, if you're able to put tight ends back there and they can still get the job done, you're probably not going to keep Shane Smith. But it's last year they were easy to defend because they were so vanilla. You knew how they're going to line up. You knew who was going to be on the field. Hopefully this year they won't be as easy to defend. Because they're going to switch up the formations a lot, but also hopefully the offensive line can, provide enough confidence to the play callers, McAdoo and Sullivan, that they can use the entire playbook and not just the short passing game, not just the draw game. They can use everything that they have.
All right. Well, this has been Sy'56 and Mike Siegel from BBI discussing the last Giants preseason game against Cleveland and the upcoming game against the Jets. On behalf of Eric Kennedy, we'd like to say goodbye, and we'll see you next week.
Cool.
All right.